Sustainable fisheries and aquaculture directly contribute to agricultural productivity, food systems, and broad-based social, economic, and environmental resilience from household through to landscape level.
This is supportive of the aspirations and goals in Africa's Agenda 2063, the African Union Malabo Declaration of Agricultural Transformation, and the policy framework and reform strategy for fisheries and aquaculture in Africa.
Africa has an abundance of aquatic resources. These resources offer a variety of benefits, particularly to those who depend directly on fish and aquatic products for their livelihood.
Fish and aquaculture is important in Africa for two reasons mainly: food security and economic development. In terms of food security, we all know how fish contribute to food and nutrition security on the continent. Most we know fish is the cheapest protein in terms of nutritionist value, and in terms of food security, we all know how fish is important, especially in the fishing communities. We know how fish provide incomes and wealth to our economies, so fish is very important for the continent in this sense.
Trade in aquatic resources contributes to revenues, investment, and local and regional economic development. Benefits are also derived from the conservation and sustainable use of globally significant aquatic biodiversity. The sector, therefore, has enormous potential for contributing to blue economic growth for the continent. The value added by the fisheries and aquaculture sector as a whole is estimated at more than $24 billion. So, the importance of managing these resources well cannot be overstated. This is a contribution of approximately 1.25% of the GDP of all African countries and 6% of Africa's overall agricultural GDP of $288.4 billion. Current annual total fish production is estimated at 10.5 million metric tons, which constitutes 6% of the global fisheries production from all subsectors. Among the subsectors, marine fisheries contribute the largest amount to Africa's total fish production at 56%. Inland fisheries follow with 27% and aquaculture at 17%. In 2016, 10% of all people engaged in the fisheries and aquaculture sectors were from Africa. Of the 12.3 million people employed in the entire fishery sector, half are fishers, nearly 5 million, 42% are processors, and just under 1 million, 8% work in aquaculture. Of those working in fisheries, more than half are employed in inland fisheries. In the processing sector, the largest share of employees, 42%, work in marine artisanal fisheries, while 30% work in inland fisheries and 28% in industrial fisheries. Women make up more than a quarter, 27.3% of all the people engaged in fisheries and aquaculture, with the majority of women, 91.5%, employed in post-harvest activities, while 7.2% are fishers and only 1.3% are fish farmers.
The fisheries and the aquaculture sector faces numerous challenges that continue to deny the African Union member states the realization of full potential contribution by the sector to food security and socio-economic growth.
In the continent fisheries, the fisheries resources that are overexploited, we could produce enough to feed the whole continent, but unfortunately due to poor management policies, poor enforcement, an increased illegal fishing, a lot of waste, because 35% of what we're producing is wasted before it gets to the plate. Because of all those reasons, we're not producing enough to feed our people.
The stigma of poor governance surrounding African fisheries and aquaculture, together with increasing human populations and unemployment growth on the continent, have negatively impacted social welfare, livelihoods, food security, and wealth creation. Appropriate policies and regulatory frameworks are required to realize the full potential of fisheries and aquaculture for Africa's people, and particularly our youth.
To catalyze structural transformation, we need new policy dialogues and multi-stakeholders partnerships for new jobs and new opportunities for our young people.
Acknowledging these challenges to the sector, the 2010 Banjul Conference of African Ministers for Fisheries and Aquaculture recommended that the African Union establish a mechanism for broad-based participatory policy dialogue and fisheries management to ensure coherence of policies and initiatives. This led to the inclusive process of crafting the Policy Framework and Reform Strategy for Fisheries and Aquaculture in Africa, or PFRS, that was endorsed by the African heads of states and governments in 2014 as a blueprint for fisheries and aquaculture governance reforms for the continent. The African Fisheries Reform Mechanism was endorsed concurrently in 2014 as an African Union platform to support coordination and coherence in the management and development of the sector. Around the world, people are building innovative partnerships to generate these holistic strategies, capturing synergies between food production, ecosystem conservation, and improved livelihoods. Since 2014, the EU-funded Fisheries Governance Project has supported the implementation of the PFRS, the Malabo Declaration, and Agenda 2063.
AU IBAR is the leading implementation of the Fisheries Governance Project, funded by the European Union. The overall objectives of this project is to enhance the contribution of fisheries resources to food security and economic growth in Africa.
The project has enabled governance reforms in fisheries and aquaculture on the continent by embodying an approach that breaks down sectoral barriers, capitalizes on synergies in the sector, facilitates inclusivity and engagement, improves coherence in governance instruments, and strengthens coordination and collaboration among the diverse array of stakeholders. The project has addressed institutional strengthening, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, sustainable small-scale and inland fisheries management, aquaculture development, and advocacy and lesson learning for improved market access and equitable sustainable benefits from aquatic resources endowments. Regional cooperation that is essential in the realization of the reforms outlined in the PFRS has been supported through the FishGov project by strengthening regional platforms and networks to inform continental mechanisms. The Fisheries Governance Project has also supported a strengthened role for regional economic communities in cooperation with the regional fisheries bodies, non-state actors, and other partners for delivering programs on region-wide needs of common interest.
There are a number of things that the FishGov has really achieved. First, it has brought Africans to think of fish.
The project facilitated the establishing of regional platforms in 4 regions of the continent.
So in essence, from policy perspective, FishGov has helped us to ensure that we strengthen the governance elements of fisheries in order for us to improve on management, but also so that we have capacity on policy to ensure that best practices are adopted, institutions are strengthened, and also capacities are developed for individuals who are managing the fish and aquaculture sectors.
FishGov nous a aidés dans plusieurs domaines. Il nous a aidés à former des groupes au niveau africain dans les 55 pays de l'Afrique. FishGov nous a aidés à se réunir. Malgré cet effort, c'est depuis 2017, en avril 2017, ils nous ont aidés à former un cadre d'échange entre les femmes. Ils nous ont aidés à changer entre les pays, les techniques de transformation par exemple.
The project has thus supported the coherent management of the sector on all levels among all stakeholders. The importance of the fisheries and aquaculture sector has received high visibility in the AU policy organs as well as in regional and national institutions.
This has been really changing the attitude of policymakers at different levels, and this is, I can consider it as a major output that will affect increasing the allocation of financial resource, restructuring of the fisheries unit to have more impact on it. So this is one of the major output I can say, as also engaged from the very beginning with FishGov project.
In addition, project support has strengthened the African voice in international fora relevant to the sector, and dialogue between stakeholders has improved towards elaborating and implementing a harmonized work program. This is catalyzing innovative partnerships to generate evidence-based strategies for maximizing synergies between food production, ecosystem conservation, and improved livelihoods, and for delivering on the goals, targets, and indicators for Agenda 2063. A number of priorities were identified through the FishGov project.
Number one, coordination and policy coherence in governance of the sector. Number two, optimization fisheries and aquaculture production and productivity. Three, increasing market access and investment in the sector. Four, knowledge generation and implementation. Fifth, strengthen the African voice.
The challenge will be now to maintain the momentum towards improved governance of the sector.